Have you ever walked into a room and just felt it? That shift in the air. Everyone's smiling, laughing, nodding politely, but deep down you know something's off. Like you're watching a play, and every person is wearing a mask. People say the world is a stage, but no one tells you how exhausting it is to sit in the audience, watching everyone perform, while you pretend to believe them. Ever sat in a meeting and caught the vibe? Everyone acts engaged, clapping, trading glances, but their feet point toward the exit. Their silence is loud. Their words sound right but feel empty. And that's when it hits you, they're not really here. They're acting. And the worst part? You start to wonder, am I performing too? That's where Stoicism enters the picture. Not as a dusty philosophy from the past, but as a sharp, clear lens that helps you see what's real. If someone deceives you, it's because you first deceived yourself. Epictetus. The Stoics didn't just study human nature. They stared it dead in the eye. They knew we wear masks, not just to fool others, but to protect ourselves. We wear confidence to cover insecurity. We joke to hide pain. We act kind when we want something in return. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop listening to what people say and start tuning into what they reveal, a whole new world opens up. And it's not always pretty. It's raw. It's messy. But it's honest. And that honesty? That's where real power lives. Because when you learn to see clearly, without judgment, without ego, you stop being manipulated. You stop being disappointed when people show their masks. And instead, you start understanding the fear behind them. Marcus Aurelius put it best. You always have the option to have no opinion. There's never a need to get upset. That's the key. Clarity doesn't mean confrontation. Seeing through people isn't about calling them out. It's about understanding without reacting. Noticing what others miss, reading beyond the surface, and staying calm while you do. Because the clearer you see the world, the less control it has over your peace. You begin to realize, the friend who talks too much, he's hiding loneliness. The coworker who gossips, she's battling insecurity. The partner who pulls away, they're not cold, they're scared of being hurt again. And suddenly your frustration fades, replaced with insight. That's the training Stoicism gives you. Not to become cold, but to stay calm in a chaotic world. Stoics don't reject emotion. They anchor themselves in it. They don't get swept up in the drama. They stay centered. They observe. And when the time is right, they act with intention. Here's a truth nobody really says out loud. Most people are living in survival mode. They've built their personalities to protect themselves. They lie, not just to others, but to themselves. And once you get that, you stop taking everything so personally. You stop overreacting. You start living on purpose instead of living on autopilot. That's why Stoicism talks about detachment, not from people, but from illusion. When Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things," he was talking about moments just like this one. The way you see people, the stories you tell yourself about them. That's what either robs your peace or sets you free. So let me ask you, do you want to keep walking through life blind, charmed by every sweet word, every carefully crafted smile? Or are you ready to really see, not just what people say, but what they're actually trying to hide? Because when you do, you start to move through the world with quiet strength. You don't need constant answers. You start spotting patterns. You realize people are showing you who they are all the time. You just haven't been trained to notice. But once you do, you see the way they change tone when they're nervous, how they hesitate when they lie, how they treat the waitress when they think it doesn't matter, how their emotions spike when their ego is touched. Each moment is a clue. Each action, a window into their truth. This video, this journey, it's not about learning how to judge others. It's about learning how to understand them. And through that, better understand yourself. Because the more you observe human nature, the more you see, everyone is carrying invisible wounds. Everyone is acting out of unresolved pain. Everyone wears armor, even when they no longer need to. And this is where the Stoic stands tall. Not by trying to fix the world, but by mastering themselves. So if you've ever felt like something's just not right, if you've sensed the act, If you've been betrayed by a mask that smiled at you for too long, then you're in the right place. This journey isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about freeing yourself. Because seeing clearly, that's freedom. Understanding others, that's peace. And living without illusion, that's power. Take a breath, drop the judgment, and get ready to see the world and yourself like never before. Because once you learn to read people through the Stoic lens, you'll never see them the same way again. And more importantly, you'll never see yourself the same way either. Part 1, Tell Me More, the superpower hidden in silence. Now that your eyes are open, let's talk about one of the simplest tools, and yet one of the most powerful. 3 words that can break through any performance, any mask, any facade. Tell me more. At first, it sounds way too basic, too soft, too polite to be powerful. But don't let its simplicity fool you. This isn't small talk. It's a scalpel, cutting past defenses. A key, unlocking what's hidden beneath the surface. A mirror, where people end up seeing themselves more clearly than ever. I still remember the first time I used it, not as a tactic, but as a moment of presence. I was in a dumb debate with a friend, arguing about pineapple on pizza. I was loaded with facts, sarcasm, and ready to win. But something inside me paused. Maybe it was that voice that had recently discovered Stoicism. Instead of pushing my opinion, I leaned back and said, "Tell me more." That was it. What happened next? We didn't talk about pizza. We talked about his childhood, family dinners, how pineapple reminded him of broken traditions, of chaos at the dinner table, of people pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. It had nothing to do with pizza. It was about belonging, and loss, and something much deeper. That's when it hit me. People don't want to win arguments. They want to be understood. And when you say those 3 words, tell me more, you give them something almost no one gives anymore. Space, safety, silence. The Stoics called it apatheia, not apathy but calm clarity. The ability to observe without reacting, to see without judgment, to remain still while the world reveals itself. When you use tell me more, you're not being passive. You're being disciplined. You're refusing the urge to correct, compete, control. You're stepping outside your ego, the one that wants to speak, impress, defend. Instead, you listen. And in that silence, people reveal everything. I've used this phrase in places you wouldn't expect. In business meetings, in personal conversations, even in situations where someone was clearly trying to manipulate me. Every single time, they shared more than they meant to. Not because I tricked them, because they felt safe. Safe enough to drop the act, to let their guard down, to speak not from the script, but from the heart. Here's why it works. Most people go through life unseen, unheard, rushed, interrupted, judged. But when you say, tell me more, and actually mean it, you give them the gift of being heard without expectation, and something opens inside them. Suddenly, the person across from you isn't just talking. They're revealing their values, their fears, their past, their insecurities, not with dramatic confessions, but in the little things they say once they stop guarding themselves. That's what makes this tool so powerful. It's invisible, gentle, but cuts straight to the truth. And the Stoic lesson here is clear. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Epictetus. Stoicism isn't about staying silent for the sake of being quiet. It's about staying still long enough to understand. And when you understand someone, really understand them, you're not reacting anymore. You're responding with wisdom. You start seeing the signals. The overconfident client? He's desperate for control. The loud friend who dominates the conversation? She's terrified of silence. The person who jokes all the time? They're masking pain. You don't need to say it out loud. You just need to see it. And in that moment, you're no longer playing the same game everyone else is. You're not trying to win the conversation. You're trying to understand the person behind it. This is how trust is built. Not through agreement, but through presence. It's not about being the smartest, or the loudest, or the one with the strongest opinions. It's about being the calmest, the most centered, the one who actually sees. Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved. Marcus Aurelius. When you become that steady presence in any interaction, the one who doesn't flinch, overreact, or judge, people naturally begin to open up, because they're not used to that. And when someone finally feels understood, they start telling you everything they were too afraid to admit, sometimes even to themselves. So next time someone's ranting, or oversharing, or even acting defensive, don't interrupt. Pause, look them in the eye, and say it with calm curiosity. Tell me more. You'll be amazed at what unfolds next. Part 2. Watch how they treat people with no power, the mirror of true character. Now that you know how silence can unlock truth, let's talk about something that speaks louder than words: behavior. Because while people can fake words, their actions, they tell the truth. If you want to really know someone, don't watch how they treat you. Watch how they treat the people they think don't matter. The waiter, the janitor, the delivery driver, the intern who just started. Anyone with no status, no power, no influence. That's where their real self shows up. I'll never forget this one moment. There was this guy I used to work with, super charismatic. He knew how to work a room. Always smiling. Always saying the right thing. But one afternoon we went out to lunch. And when the waiter came over, his whole energy changed. He snapped his order without making eye contact. Didn't say please. Didn't say thank you. Didn't treat the server like a person. In that moment I realized everything he showed in public was just for show. Because how someone treats the invisible people in the room reveals everything. You can judge a man's character by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. That idea has been repeated through history, and the Stoics lived by it. The truth is, it's easy to be nice when there's something to gain. It's easy to be charming when it benefits you. But when someone thinks no one important is watching, that's when their mask falls. That's the test. And Stoicism teaches us to look beyond appearances, to observe, to notice the little things. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because a Stoic doesn't care about image. A Stoic cares about integrity, about doing the right thing, especially when there's no audience to applaud. So if someone treats the barista like trash but flatters you, they're not kind. They're calculating. There's a big difference between being genuinely good and just being good at playing the part. Kindness isn't proven when you're trying to impress someone. It's revealed in how you treat people who have nothing to offer you. Think about it. Have you ever been on a date with someone who was sweet to you, but rude to the waiter? Or had a manager who complimented you in front of others, but mocked the assistant behind closed doors? That's not just a mood. That's a window into who they really are. And here's the Stoic truth. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Real character isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly in how you treat the person holding the door, the person cleaning the floor, the person who can't help you get ahead. And on a deeper level, how someone treats others is a mirror of how they see themselves. People who are secure, who know their worth, don't need to belittle others to feel big. They don't need to dominate or disrespect. They don't crave attention because they're already grounded. But the ones who are cruel, cold, dismissive, they're projecting their own insecurity, trying to feel powerful by making others feel small. Seneca once said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." The Stoics understood that status is an illusion. We're all equal in nature and all capable of dignity. So if you want to understand someone, don't just listen to what they say. Watch what they do when no one's watching. And also, ask yourself, what about you? How do you treat people when you're in a rush? Do you acknowledge those who serve you? Do you say thank you to people who think no one notices? Because these small habits, they reveal your true values. We all slip up. We're human. But the Stoic path is about catching those moments and using them to grow. It's about choosing to act with virtue, even when it's uncomfortable, unnoticed, or inconvenient. Because who you are when no one's looking, that's the real you. Not your resume, not your Instagram feed, not your title, just your choices. Repeat it every day, in small, quiet ways. Do not waste what remains of your life in guessing what others are doing. Be good. Be straight. Marcus Aurelius. When I started watching people this way, everything changed. I stopped being fooled by charm. I started paying attention to patterns. And more importantly, I started holding myself to that standard. Because being stoic isn't about being cold. It's about being consistent. The same values whether someone is watching or not. The same respect no matter who's across the table. So next time you're wondering who someone really is, don't look at how they treat you. Look at how they treat the person they think doesn't matter. Because that moment, that tiny, unfiltered moment, will tell you more than an entire conversation ever could. And maybe, just maybe, it'll remind you of who you are too. Part 3, their past is the key to their present, seeing beyond the surface. Now that you've started to see through people, through silence, through how they treat those without power, let's go one level deeper. Here's a truth that'll change how you see almost everyone in your life. Most people aren't reacting to you. They're reacting to pain they've never healed. The past doesn't stay behind. It walks into every room with them, shows up in every relationship, every decision, every conflict. You ever meet someone who seems overly guarded? Quick to anger? Always on edge? It's easy to think, what's their problem? But the better question is, what happened to them? I had a friend once, brilliant, charismatic, successful. But something was always tense. He'd blow up over little things. He didn't trust easily. Always thought people were out to get him. At first I thought he was just high-strung. But then I found out more. He grew up in chaos. He'd been betrayed by people he trusted. He learned early that letting your guard down meant getting hurt. Suddenly all those reactions made sense. His anger wasn't aggression, it was armor. His silence wasn't coldness, it was protection. That's when I understood what Stoicism teaches so clearly. Don't hate it. Don't run from it. Just understand it. Marcus Aurelius. The Stoic doesn't excuse people, but they don't judge them blindly either. They ask, why might this person be the way they are? That clarity gives you control. Control over your own reactions. So when someone's difficult, when they're rude, distant, defensive, instead of snapping back or shutting down, you pause and ask yourself, where is this coming from? That coworker who micromanages everything? Maybe they were humiliated for making a mistake once. That partner who avoids emotional closeness? Maybe love once meant pain. That friend who always cancels plans last minute? Maybe they grew up thinking they were never wanted in the first place. The Stoic doesn't make this personal. They see the behavior for what it is, a pattern, a survival response, a history. Epictetus said, if you want to grow, be willing to understand, not control. People don't always need fixing. They need to be seen without being blamed or babied. And sometimes the best thing you can offer someone isn't advice. It's space. A moment where they don't have to defend themselves. Where they're not being judged, pitted, or analyzed. Just seen. Because here's the truth most people miss. Everyone's fighting a battle you can't see. And they're not fighting you. They're fighting ghosts, echoes of past betrayals, heartbreaks, trauma. But here's where Stoicism gives you your greatest power. You don't have to fight them back. You don't have to fix them either. You just have to see them clearly and decide how you want to show up. I've used this in every area of life. With coworkers, friends, even strangers. I once worked with a woman who came across as cold and distant. Everyone said she was mean. But I noticed she flinched when people got too close. She never raised her voice. She just shut down. So I tried something simple. I didn't push. I stayed calm. I gave her time and space. Weeks later, she told me she'd been bullied in her last job. Ridiculed. Undermined. And now, she was just trying to survive. It had nothing to do with us. She wasn't mean. She was scared. And once I saw that, everything shifted. She softened. Because I did. That's what Stoicism teaches us. You don't change people by confronting their weakness. You change everything by mastering your response. Because when you stop needing people to behave a certain way, you free yourself. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to fix everyone. You simply observe, understand, and choose your action from wisdom, not emotion. That's the difference between a reactive life and a stoic one. Most people react. They get triggered, take things personally, spiral. But the stoic pauses. They ask, what's the story behind this behavior? And then they act with intention. You want peace? Stop expecting people to be fully healed. Start understanding that most are still bleeding underneath their smiles. That angry text? That rude email? That weird distance? It's not always about you. It's about what they've been through. And here's where it gets even more powerful. This applies to you too. Your own reactions, your anger, your fear, your silence, your triggers, they all have roots. Old wounds, old beliefs, old stories. So before you judge someone else's behavior, look in the mirror and ask, what pattern am I still playing out? What part of my past am I still bringing into today? This is what makes Stoicism so profound. It's not just about observing others. It's about learning yourself through how you respond to them. Because once you start seeing people clearly, not as threats, not as problems, but as humans with pain, you gain something rare. Peace, presence, power over your own mind. So next time someone pushes your buttons, take a breath. Ask, what are they carrying that I can't see? And more importantly, who do I want to be in this moment? That's Stoicism. That's self-mastery. And that's where the real transformation begins. Part 4, Tone Doesn't Lie, How Subtle Shifts Reveal the Truth. By now, you've started to see how much people reveal. In silence, in how they treat those with no power, and in the stories written into their past. But there's another layer. One so subtle, most people miss it completely. And yet, it speaks louder than words. It's not just what people say. It's how they say it. Their tone, the rhythm, the pitch, the pauses, the energy behind the words. These small shifts, they're not random. They're clues, and they tell you everything you need to know. I once worked with someone who was always composed. He knew how to speak confidently, professionally, never missed a beat. But during one meeting, when we were discussing a big deadline, his tone suddenly changed. He still used the right words, but the energy? It was off. He hesitated, spoke slower. His voice dipped in a way that didn't match what he was saying. And that's when I knew something wasn't right. Sure enough, he had missed key deliverables. The project was behind. But I didn't learn that from his words. I learned it from his tone. That's when I understood something most people never realize. Words lie. Tone doesn't. It's easy to say what people want to hear. But your nervous system? It doesn't lie. You can rehearse your sentences, sure. But if your heart rate spikes, if your body is in conflict with your words, your tone will expose it. That's why Stoicism doesn't just teach us to listen. It teaches us to observe. When someone is afraid, it's because they've given too much power to something outside of their control. Marcus Aurelius. And that fear? That tension? It slips into their voice. Sometimes it's in the pitch. Sometimes it's a crack. Other times it's a pause that lasts a second too long. You don't need to confront them. You just need to notice. Because most people don't even realize they're doing it. They're not always lying to you. Often they're lying to themselves, trying to convince you, while they haven't yet convinced themselves. And that internal conflict, that's what tone reveals. I've seen it in arguments, negotiations, relationships. Someone says, "I'm not mad," but their voice is sharp. They say, "It's all good," but there's hesitation. They smile while speaking, but the warmth isn't in their voice. You can feel the disconnection. And that disconnection is the tell. When words and tone don't align, trust the tone. I've even been on the other side of it. There were times when I was saying yes to something I didn't want. Times I said I was okay when I wasn't, and without meaning to, my voice gave me away. Someone looked at me and simply said, "You don't sound like you mean that." They were right. And I realized something powerful. Tone exposes the truth we're not ready to admit. That's why the Stoic listens not just with their ears, but with their full awareness. They don't jump to conclusions. They don't attack. They simply pay attention. They let the other person speak, and they listen for the shift. Because when someone's tone suddenly drops, when their rhythm stutters, when their volume or energy changes mid-sentence, that's when you pause and think, what's underneath this? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's uncertainty or shame. But whatever it is, it's real. And when you stay calm in that moment, when you resist the urge to call it out or fill the silence, you create space for the truth to surface. That's emotional intelligence. That's Stoic presence. Epictetus said, "Let your words be few and your tone be true." It's not just about what you say, it's about alignment. When your thoughts, words, and tone are in sync, you feel strong, grounded, clear. But when they're not, when your mouth says one thing but your voice says another, that's where the tension lives. And people pick up on it, even if they don't consciously know why. So here's the practice. In your next conversation, don't just listen to the words. Listen for the energy shift. Feel the tone. And when something feels off, don't rush to respond. Don't challenge or accuse. Just pause. Let it hang there. Often, that space is all it takes for the other person to open up, or at least realize they're not fooling anyone. And on the flip side, pay attention to your own voice. Are you rushing through your words to cover discomfort? Are you softening your tone to avoid conflict? Are you using a cheerful pitch to hide pain? The Stoics' goal isn't to sound perfect, to be real. Because the truth isn't just in what we say, it's in the tone we carry. In a world full of noise, those who can hear the quiet shifts, the subtle breaks, the unspoken tension, they become the ones who truly understand others. And more importantly, they begin to understand themselves. Part 5, How They Act When No One's Watching, the Unfiltered Self. By now, you've learned how people reveal themselves. In the words they don't say, in how they treat those with no power, and in the scars they carry from the past. But there's one test that cuts deeper than all the rest. One that shows you someone's true self. It's not how they act when everyone's watching. It's how they behave when no one is. If you really want to know who someone is, don't listen to what they say in public. Watch what they do in private. Watch who they become when they think it doesn't count. I once had a manager who was the picture of professionalism. In meetings, she praised the team, smiled, said all the right things. But the second our director walked out, she flipped. Her voice sharpened. She belittled people, rolled her eyes, became a completely different person. That's when it hit me. The person she was when no one important was around. That was the real her. Because anyone can be kind when it's convenient. Anyone can fake warmth when there's something to gain. But the way someone acts when there's no spotlight, no incentive, no eyes on them, that's honesty. That's their default. That's their core. You can judge a person's character by what they do when no one's looking. A truth the Stoics lived by. See, Stoicism isn't just about appearing virtuous. It's about actually living with virtue, in every moment, especially the unseen ones. Because the Stoic doesn't need applause. They don't perform morality. They embody it. Even when it's quiet. Even when no one claps. I've seen this play out in relationships too. At the beginning, everyone's on their best behavior. Sweet texts, thoughtful gestures, extra patience. But give it time. Watch how they act after the excitement fades. When comfort sets in. When effort becomes optional. Do they still show up? Still listen? Still care? Or do they only behave when there's something to prove? That shift is everything. And the Stoic sees it. Not with judgment, but with clarity. You don't control other people, only how you respond. Epictetus. So when someone's mask falls, the Stoic doesn't flinch. They simply note it. Not with bitterness, but with awareness. Because when you stop expecting performance, you start recognizing patterns. I've seen this in friendships. I've seen this in workplaces. I've seen this in myself. And here's what I've learned. Character isn't built in the spotlight. It's revealed in the shadows. It's how someone treats the server after a long day. It's whether they show kindness when no one's watching. It's what they say about people who aren't in the room. That's not opinion. That's data. People are always telling you who they are. You just have to be patient enough to watch. And here's the part most people forget. This test is not just for others. For you too. Who are you when no one's looking? What choices do you make when there's no reward? Do you live by your values, or only when someone's there to notice? That's the Stoic challenge. Waste no more time debating what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Not just when it's easy, not just when you're praised, but especially when it's hard. Especially when no one's watching. Because that's the version of you that defines your peace, that shapes your self-respect, that builds or breaks your inner confidence. I once witnessed something that will stay with me forever. It was late. I was at a gas station. An older man pulled in with a beat-up car. His card kept declining. He looked frustrated, embarrassed, and out of nowhere another guy stepped in, paid for his gas, quietly. No words, no camera, no audience. He just nodded and walked away. That's character. Not staged, not shared, just lived. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Don't do good to be seen. Do good because it's who you are. So the next time you want to know who someone is, don't focus on their charm, their image, or their status. Watch what they do when there's nothing to gain, when no one's keeping score, when it doesn't matter, because that's when it actually does. And when you want to know who you are, ask yourself this: would I still do this if no one ever saw it? If no one thanked me? If no one gave me credit? That answer? That's your character. And the Stoic? He doesn't need credit. He just needs to sleep at night with a clear mind and wake up proud of who he is. Part 6. Emotional reactions reveal what they truly value, the unfiltered priorities. We've peeled back the masks. We've watched how people act when no one's looking. We've traced their behavior back to the pain they've carried for years. But there's one signal that cuts straight to the core. A reaction that's raw, unfiltered, and almost impossible to fake. Emotion. If you want to understand someone's true values, don't just listen to what they claim is important. Watch what triggers them. Watch what makes them light up. Watch what makes them flinch. Watch what makes them snap. Because here's the truth. People's strongest emotional reactions are a spotlight on what matters most to them. I once worked with someone who was calm, professional, almost too composed. But one day in a simple meeting, someone casually suggested a few changes to a project he'd been leading. What happened next shocked everyone. He exploded. Anger, defensiveness, total loss of control. The suggestion was small. The change was logical. But his reaction, it was personal. That's when I realized he wasn't reacting to the suggestion. He was reacting to what it meant. That project was more than a task to him. It was tied to his identity, his worth, his pride. And the reaction told us everything we needed to know, without him saying a word. This is what Stoicism teaches us so well. If you are disturbed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke. Marcus Aurelius. See, emotional outbursts don't happen at random. They're messages, signals, warnings. When someone overreacts, they're revealing their attachment to something. It might be a belief, a role, a fear, or a deeply personal value. The person who freaks out when you question them probably ties their identity to always being right. The person who panics when you cancel plans might fear abandonment because they've lived it before. The person who glows when you praise them probably craves validation they never got growing up. Emotions don't lie. They just don't always explain themselves. And that's where you come in. The Stoic doesn't react to emotion with more emotion. They observe it. They ask, what's really going on here? They understand that emotions are windows, not weapons. I've used this in relationships, friendships, even quick conversations with strangers. You don't need someone to say, I care about being respected. Just watch how they respond when they feel disrespected. You don't need someone to say, I value stability. Just notice how anxious they get when things feel uncertain. People are constantly telling you what matters most to them through their emotions. But here's where it gets deeper. You do it too. Your own emotional reactions? They're pointing to your deepest priorities. Ever gotten irritated by small things and couldn't explain why? Ever felt wounded by a harmless comment? That's not weakness. That's a signal. You're touching something that matters, something unhealed, something you might not have admitted yet. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters." Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress your emotions. It asks you to study them, to see them clearly, and then choose your response from a place of strength, not impulse. So next time you feel your own reaction building, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually reacting to? Is this about this moment, or a story I've been carrying? What does this reaction reveal about what I value, fear, or protect? And when someone else overreacts, don't take it personally. Don't fight it. Watch it. See what they're attached to. See what they're trying to protect. See what matters to them beneath the surface. Because once you understand what drives someone emotionally, you no longer have to guess who they are. You know. And once you understand your own emotions, you stop letting them control you. That's the Stoic's edge. You don't suppress emotions. You channel them into understanding. You become unshaken, unbothered, but more aware than ever before. So next time you feel yourself reacting, pause, breathe, and instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" What truth is this emotion trying to show me? That's emotional mastery. That's Stoic self-awareness. That's how you turn inner chaos into calm, confident clarity. You've seen it now. The quiet signals, the tone shifts, the way people act when no one's watching, the masks they wear, and the moments they slip. You've started seeing people not for who they pretend to be, but for who they truly are. Not with judgment, not with frustration, but with clarity. Because here's the truth. Everyone is carrying something. Everyone is reacting to pain they haven't fully faced. We walk into rooms still echoing with old heartbreak. We speak from unhealed wounds. We protect ourselves with stories that were built long before today. But once you learn to really see people, you stop being triggered by their behavior. You stop needing them to act the way you want. You stop reacting and start responding. And that's where your true power begins. That's Stoicism. It's not about being cold or emotionless. It's about staying centered, especially when the world is not. It's about being the stillness in the storm. The one who listens deeper, sees clearer, and moves with purpose. Be tolerant with others. Be strict with yourself. Marcus Aurelius. So when someone lashes out, you don't fight back. You understand. When someone hides behind a fake smile, you don't get fooled. You see fear. When someone overreacts, you don't get offended. You recognize what they're attached to. And suddenly you're no longer reacting to people's pain. You're witnessing it. That's emotional strength. That's clarity. That's what sets you apart from the chaos. Because while the rest of the world is shouting, you've learned how to pause, to breathe, to listen, and to choose your next move with wisdom. That's what makes you unshakable. Not because life stops testing you, but because you've stopped giving away your peace. Now, will you mess up sometimes? Of course. You'll still react. You'll still stumble. You'll still fall into old habits from time to time. That's okay. But now, you'll catch it faster, recover sooner, grow stronger. That's the Stoic path. Not perfect but present, not cold but conscious, not rigid but deeply rooted. So the next time someone tests your patience, your boundaries, your peace, don't ask, "Why is this happening?" How do I want to respond? Because in that tiny space, between the trigger and the reaction, your entire life is shaped. That's where self-mastery begins. That's where real freedom lives. If this resonated with you, don't stop here. Take the next step. Tap the next video on screen. And keep building the strength to stay grounded no matter what life throws at you. Drop a comment. What insight hit hardest for you today? And if you haven't already, subscribe. Not for noise, not for hype, but for real growth and real peace. Until then, stay grounded, stay sharp, and keep walking the Stoic path.